Good evening. My name is Dr. Alan Grant. I'm a professor of paleontology. That means I study dinosaurs. And tonight I'm here to read you a very special bedtime story. Jurassic Park, the Junior Novelization. Because it's so long, we're going to be dividing them into separate chapters, different videos, but all linked together in one playlist. Are you ready? Be advised, although this book was written for children, it does follow the film story very closely. As such, there are instances and mentions of violence and death that may be too intense for some young listeners. Please use your own judgment to determine whether it is appropriate for your little ones. We're going to start with the prologue. On a small island off the coast of South America, nighttime fell. Searchlights clicked on. Suddenly, a tropical jungle was brightly lit. A dozen workers stood guard around a section of the jungle. The area was closed off by a tall electrical fence, the kind of fence that would surround a prison. But this wasn't a prison. It was an animal pen. The workers got their stun guns ready. Slowly, a large crate was lowered to the ground. A door slid open in the fence. Then the crate was pushed up against the opening, and a worker jumped on top of the crate. He grabbed hold of the handles, trying to lift a panel. It was stuck. The worker pulled harder. Then, all at once, the panel flew up, and the worker lost his balance. He fell to the ground on the other side of the fence, and the crate was open. Roar! A terrifying sound came from inside. Quick as lightning, a claw whipped out. It reached for the fallen worker. Then it took hold and dragged him toward the crate. "Fire! Fire! Now!" ordered a voice. The stun guns flashed, but it was too late. The worker was gone. Chapter 1. The sun beat down on Dr. Alan Grant. It was hot, and there were no trees to give him shade. There was just the dust and rocks of the Montana Badlands. But Alan Grant was a paleontologist on an archaeological dig. He didn't care about the heat. He didn't care how scruffy he looked with his stubbly chin and dusty clothes. He was interested in only one thing: dinosaurs. Alan bent closer to the ground. He was looking at a dinosaur fossil. 4 complete skeletons in such a small area, he said to Dr. Ellie Sattler. These raptors probably hunted as a team. The Tenontosaurus bones over there must have been left over from lunch. Ellie, a slim blonde woman, leaned closer to the fossils. She studied the bones too. "Dr. Grant, Dr. Sattler," called a volunteer from across the dig. "We're ready to try the computer again." Alan sighed. He didn't want to leave the excavation site. "I hate computers," he muttered to Ellie as they headed back to the base camp. Alan didn't care for the camp either. It was like a circus with tents everywhere and grown-ups and kids running around. "Why do these volunteers have to bring their kids anyway?" Alan asked. Ellie didn't answer. She knew how Alan felt about kids. For some reason, he just didn't like them. Alan and Ellie walked into one of the tents. Inside, volunteers were grouped around a computer screen. They were looking at a dinosaur skeleton. A radar pellet had been shot into the ground around the fossils. They could see the entire skeleton without digging it up. "Velociraptor?" Ellie asked Alan. "Yeah, good shape too. Look at the bone in the wrist. No wonder dinosaurs learned to fly." A volunteer laughed. "Dinosaurs? Fly? Obviously you haven't read my book," Alan said to him. "Maybe dinosaurs have more in common with birds than reptiles. Even the word raptor, as in velociraptor, means bird of prey." A boy stepped forward to look at the screen. "It doesn't look very scary," he said. "Looks more like a 6-foot turkey." Alan looked the boy over. "Not scary, huh? Try to imagine yourself in the age of dinosaurs. You move into a clearing, but the raptor knew you were there a long time ago. It bobs its head and it moves like a bird, and you keep still. You think if you don't move, he won't see you. That would work with the Tyrannosaurus Rex, but not the Velociraptor. The attack comes not from the front, not from the side. It comes from 2 raptors you didn't even know were there. They slash at you with their claws. It's like a razor cut, fast and deep. The boy backed away, his eyes wide with fear. So, try and show a little respect, Alan said as he left the tent. Ellie came up behind him. If you wanted to scare him, you could have just pulled a gun. Alan shrugged. He felt a little bad, but he just didn't like kids. They were always in the way. You know, he said, me and kids... You old fossil, Ellie said, giving him a hug. Ellie loved Alan, but he could be so annoying, especially when it came to kids. She wondered if he would ever change. If not, could they have a future together? Suddenly, a strong wind sprang up. Dirt and sand blew everywhere, and a roaring noise filled the air. A helicopter was landing. An elderly man got out of the helicopter. Alan was furious. Who was this man? Why had he flown in like that? Didn't he realize there was a dig going on? But before Alan had a chance to say anything, the man introduced himself. John Hammond, he said. It's nice to finally meet you, Dr. Grant. John Hammond. The name sunk in, and Alan realized he was talking to the man who was funding the excavation. I can see my money has been well spent, Mr. Hammond continued, looking around. But I'll get right to the point. I own an island off the coast of South America. I spent the last 5 years setting up an animal preserve there. It's really fantastic. Our attractions will send kids right out of their minds. But there's this lawyer. He says I need experts to look over the park. I'd like you two to give your okay. You know, say that it's safe. Endorse it. I'd like you to come down for the weekend. I have a jet waiting. What kind of park is it? Asked Alan. It's... John Hammond paused, smiling. Right up your alley. Dennis Nedry sat at an outdoor table in a restaurant, waiting impatiently. He was a large man with a big grin, but his eyes were cold, and the grin was nasty. Very nasty. Nedry watched as a taxi pulled up to the curb, and a man carrying a briefcase got out. Over here, Dodgson, Nedry called to him, still grinning. Dodgson headed over, then slid his briefcase across the table. You shouldn't use my name, he said in a low voice. Dodgson, 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 Nedry said, even louder as he took the briefcase. Nedry didn't care if he made Dodgson mad. He only cared about the money he was going to make. Dodgson's company wanted something Mr. Hammond already had. Dinosaur specimens. They wanted to clone dinosaurs too, and as the designer of Hammond's high-tech security system, Dennis Nedry could help them. For a price, of course. Dodgson pointed to the briefcase. There's $750,000 in there, he said. You'll get the rest on delivery. That's $50,000 for each specimen, and there are 15 of them. Nedry's eyes narrowed. I know. Don't worry, I'll get 'em all. How do I carry them off the island? Dodgson showed him an ordinary can of shaving cream. Then he slid the bottom open. Inside were 15 different compartments, one for each specimen. Nedry nodded his approval. I'll meet your guy tomorrow night at the dock. Make sure he gets it right. I built 18 minutes into the computer program so I can beat the security system. 18 minutes and your company gets years' worth of research. Shh, Dodgson said hurriedly. A waiter was coming over to leave the check. Nedry looked down at it, then up at Dodgson, smiling his nasty grin. Dodgson paid the check. A few hours later, Ellie and Alan were in South America. They were boarding a helicopter that would take them to Mr. Hammond's island. Besides Mr. Hammond, there were 2 other men with them. The first was the lawyer, Mr. Gennaro. Hammond had told them about him. He seemed nervous, and even though he was wearing a safari outfit, he still looked like he'd be more comfortable sitting behind a desk. The other passenger was Dr. Ian Malcolm. Ian Malcolm was a mathematician. Like Alan and Ellie, he was going to check over the park. Tall, thin, and dressed all in black, he also looked out of place. But he didn't seem nervous. Instead, it seemed as if Ian found the whole situation funny. This park won't work, he was saying to Mr. Hammond, because of chaos theory. In the end, everything is unpredictable. Alan and Ellie didn't know what he was talking about. They weren't even sure what the park was about, so they kept quiet. Minutes later, the island rose sharply out of the water. Thick clouds covered its sheer cliffs. It looked strange and mysterious, like it belonged to another time. "Hold on," said Mr. Hammond. "We're going to land, and it may be a little rough." Suddenly, the helicopter dropped like a stone. Then it hit the ground with a jolt. Mr. Hammond waved grandly as he opened the helicopter door. "Welcome to Jurassic Park."